Mark Arman with VIB TV. We're here today with Joanne Schivley. Joanne is a sitting Vallejo council member, and she is running for mayor in this November's election. So Joanne, give me a little background about yourself. You're a longtime Vallejo resident, and you've had extensive experience on the city council. How many terms have you served on the city council?
I'm in my third term.
And you're in your third term, okay. Now give me a little bit of background about yourself, your experience, your work experience, for the people that don't know you that well.
Well, I was born, raised, educated right here in Vallejo. Worked most of my professional career here and was co-owner of a local business.
What kind of business?
It was auto body repair.
No kidding.
My husband's business.
Oh, okay.
He did the work, I did the paperwork.
Gotcha. So you have I know a strong background with numbers.
Yes, I have an extensive career in banking. Retired as an assistant vice president from Bank of America. Was very well versed in all forms of lending and deposits and investments.
Okay. So you want to be the mayor, and here's one of the things that I hear, and maybe you can shed some light on it. A lot of people feel discontent in the city of Vallejo, and we've been through a tough period with the bankruptcy, with the difficult times that we've been through, and there are many people that take the position of kick all the bums out. And so why are you not the baby that should be thrown out with the bathwater?
Well, for those 3 terms that I have been on the council, about 95% of the time I've been in the voting minority. So I don't exactly consider myself as part of an old regime.
So what kind of things, when you think back, just kind of reflecting on your years on the council, what votes are you most proud of, and what votes do you look back on and think, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done that? So can you give me some examples of things like that?
Well, one of the votes I'm most proud of is the one to bring Touro University to Vallejo. There have been a lot of others during the years, but to itemize them, I'd have to go look at a list.
Well, just what stands out in your mind. I mean, one of the ones that obviously comes up is people talk about you. Schivley was on the council when the unaffordable public safety contracts were voted in. So talk about that a little bit.
Okay. At that time, it was an entirely different economy than what we have now. The city had money. The city was growing. We had new developments such as Hiddenbrook and Northgate, and everything was on an upswing. The money was there. The contracts that you're referring to were brought to the council, recommended by staff and the finance director and the city manager and the person who was then mayor, that we would have enough money to pay for them. Right. Well, that obviously didn't continue. We had no idea at the time that there was going to be a housing bubble burst and that the economy was going to go in the tank like it did. I think everyone that was on the council at that time voted based on the best information that was available then. None of us had crystal balls. Since then, the total picture of the economy has changed, and obviously we've gone into bankruptcy, propelled a great deal by those contracts.
Right. So now that we're out of bankruptcy, and we have a plan, and a lot of other people that are running, I've heard them tout it as Vallejo has a balanced budget for the next 5 years. Now that sounds to me a little bit like whistling in the wind and glancing at your crystal ball.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And it's I don't feel it's incorrect. Vallejo only has a balanced budget for the next 5 years if the economy remains static, does not go down. Every economist is saying that that's not going to be the case, that the economy is going to continue to decline until at least the end of 2013. So if the economy declines, revenue will go down, and there will not be a balanced budget.
Okay, so with the probability of revenue declining based on the economy, obviously one of the things that is being touted as the answer, or one of the solutions to Vallejo's problem, at least for the foreseeable future, is Measure B, which is the 1% sales tax. Now, you voted to approve putting it on the ballot, but you've also said your position is that you're against it. So enlighten me a little bit as to your thought process on Measure B.
I'm completely opposed to it. I voted to put it on the ballot so the citizens of Vallejo could make that decision if they wanted to pay more sales tax. I see it as dodging the real problem, which is our expenses, and avoiding getting sustainable contracts. It is going to put Vallejo at an extreme disadvantage, I think, in that we will have the highest sales tax of any city in Solano County and Napa. Our residents will be able to just drive up Highway 29 to American Canyon or to Fairfield or any place that they want and escape that extra 1%. It is not the solution to the problems. It is the ultimate kicking the can down the road.
Okay, so kicking the can down the road with Measure B. In other words, your concern is that essentially the money is going to go to wages and benefits and not to the other things that the city needs. Now, let's just glance back at the contracts that we were able to work out in bankruptcy. Let's start with the fire contract with the IAFF. Now, it seems like there are some genuine concessions, and there are some real considerations that they've given up. But I guess the question would be, looking at that contract, do you think it's enough to be sustainable?
Yes, you're correct in saying that they did make concessions, and some of them were good sized, but no, it is not enough. The time it was presented to council, staff even stated that it was $1.2 million short of the savings that we needed from that group.
Okay, so we have concessions from fire, but not enough. Now, let's look at police, because obviously I'm putting fire and police first because public safety, as we well know, is a big chunk of the general fund budget. I guess it's still running close to 80% at this point. Mm-hmm. Somewhere's around there still. Now the police got a raise, and I know that's a contract that you voted against. They got the 6.29% raise last year, and is the number still being decided for this year?
Yes, it is. The comparables will not be available until the 1st of October, and staff will probably not have it worked out until the middle of October. The estimate is that it will be 1.3%, which I think equates to about $269,000 more. Okay. And I voted against 3 of the 4 contracts. So I voted against fire contract also because it did not achieve the savings that we needed.
Right. So the deals made with safety in bankruptcy, do you see those as a missed opportunity?
Absolutely. We had the opportunity to emerge with sustainable contracts. We have a contract with the police that is basically the same as it was when we entered bankruptcy. The only difference is that their health care is now capped at Kaiser North rate.
So it's a minor consideration and a pretty substantial raise.
Yes, it gave 6.29% as of July 1st, 2010, and another 1.3 probably as of July this year.
Right.
And
now,
all around us, cities were cutting.
Right. And one of the things, obviously, that has stuck with me with regards to the police contracts and the attitude of the police union is the now famous utterance by Police Chief Nicolini when he stated that he had spoken to the union, to the association, and that their position is cut the staff as much as you want. We want to be paid. Now, one of the questions would be, how do you address a change in the institutional culture within an organization like the Vallejo Police? And it seems like there has been some movement in some of the employees where there's been some bridges built and some coming together between the city, the workers, and so on. But what are your thoughts about how to best approach that attitude, and also, which plays into the contracts in 2012?
It's not something that the council will have direct control over. I think a great deal of it will depend on the new city manager that we hire and the direction that we give that person. I'm told that some of the newer police officers don't feel the same as those who have been employed for a number of years.
Right. So word is that 2012 there's going to be a big exodus of employees who are close to retirement because they want to get out while the getting is good. So that, in a sense, obviously we want experienced police officers, but we might see some of the ones that are near retirement go on their way, retire, and some new people, some new faces. So that might be a good thing, huh?
Well, it may be kind of hard to tell at this point, because that mass exodus that occurred in February of 2009 is what pushed the city over the edge towards bankruptcy.
$4 million landed on our heads, basically.
Yes, and that could happen again. Okay,
so that's certainly a concern. And has that been calculated into the new budget, that prospect of an exodus?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. So we could be in for a surprise in 2012 with all the payouts for sick leave, for vacation, for all these other perks that accrue over entire careers.
There's probably, if I remember correctly, been some amount placed in the budget for that, but there's no way of knowing exactly how much it will be.
So some choppy waters ahead, it looks like.
Yes. Not to sound like doom and gloom, but I think one of our big challenges is going to be to stay out of bankruptcy. The economy continues to decline. If we don't get sustainable contracts, it's going to be tricky.
Right. And just touching on the other employees, I know that you were an advocate for working with the IBEW workers, who are kind of the people that do all the maintenance, running the city, keeping things operating, in letting them go back to the membership and work out a way to come up with the $3.6 million in cuts.
Yes, that's one of the things that I am exceedingly proud of, because it had never been done here before. It was giving the employees an opportunity to be part of the solution, hopefully to bring them closer together, working as a team. The night that contract came to the council, Measure A had passed, so binding interest arbitration was not a consideration. The council could have imposed terms and conditions, and for the most part was ready to do exactly that. And
as I remember, there was kind of a great din and clamor from certain people on council to lower the boom.
Yes. Until I said, I'm not willing to do that just because I can. IBEW has stated up until tonight that they did not know exactly how much the money the city needed for them to save in their contract. So that was made quite apparent that night, $3.6 million. So my proposal was for IBEW to make the determination themselves, for them to decide where the savings would be. And they had 60 days to do it. And if at the end of that time they had something that was reasonable and sustainable for 2 years, that then the council would vote on it. I couldn't say that the council would pass it. But it also gave them some warning. They knew that they weren't going to wake up the next day and have a paycheck 5 or 10% smaller than that night. They would have 2 months to prepare for a reduction if they didn't come up with something that could be approved. So yeah, I feel really good about that.
Yeah,
and I think that was think outside the box.
Yeah, and I imagine, I mean, a number of the people in IBEW who I've spoken to about it certainly expressed how they we're appreciative of that
Great.
accommodation.
Well, that's what I would like to do with with the other 3 employee contracts,
Right.
2 of which come up in June of next year, and 1 which will expire in June of 2013.
So
I would like to give all the employees the opportunity to solve their own.
Now, in 2012 is police and fire,
Correct.
right? And then 2013 is camp.
Correct.
Okay, and that's the management union.
Middle management.
Right. They made really minimal concessions, quite frankly, from what I can see.
The same Kaiser North cap. They got raises though.
Right, equity adjustments and such. Yeah.
And just regular COLA raises. And they just kept 100% paid health care.
Right. Now,
And they kept what originally was called the Management Incentive Program, which is now the 120 flex hours, which is being used to compensate for overtime that they work. And
which seems so weird to me, because when you think about salaried management, normally overtime is in the private sector a non-consideration.
exactly right. If you're in management in the private sector, you do not get overtime in any way, shape, or form.
Right, right. So it's
And that's, I don't have the exact figure, but it's well over $300,000 per year. That would have been a good savings, I think.
indeed. I mean, what do you think about? What are your thoughts on the inequity? In other words, and I keep focusing a lot on employees, because obviously one of the main reasons cities exist is to provide services, and to provide services you need employees. So it's obviously central to the existence of a city. But what are your thoughts about the inequity between the different employee groups, and the fact that, well, quite frankly, some made out rather nicely and others got shafted a bit, or more than a bit?
Well, cities don't produce a product. We provide services. And when the philosophy of first in gets the best deal, when the contract negotiations were coming up, I thought that was a mistake from the very beginning, because it immediately pits employee groups against each other. The pie is only so big. The larger piece one group gets, the smaller amount is left for all of the other groups. Does not encourage teamwork.
So it's a competitive feeding frenzy, basically.
Yes.
That we have.
Yeah, and it had a horrible effect on morale.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly, yeah. I mean, that's something I think any of us who talk to the people working in the city get feedback. You can kind of see that some are a little more downtrodden, unfortunately, which is not what we want.
No, they have not been treated fairly.
Right.
And that's something that I would like to change starting in June of next year. And that is that all basic benefits are the same for every employee. Every employee gets the same level of health care paid, whether it's 80% or 75% or whatever the amount is. It's the same for everyone. Number of vacation days or weeks is the same for everyone. Sick leave is the same for everyone. Fashion it after the private sector. If you're in the private sector, it doesn't matter if you're the CEO or you just came through the door 3 days ago. The basic benefits are the same.
What about when we talk about benefits? Obviously, pensions are a big issue, and there's a lot of talk about defined contribution versus defined benefit. And obviously, in Vallejo, we have defined benefit, and we have a tremendous unfunded retiree health insurance liability.
Yes.
So maybe you could break those down, because what's the retiree health liability? Something like $200 million at this point. That's
just for health.
For health.
No, it was dropped considerably when we changed the retirees to $300 per month.
Gotcha.
As opposed to 100% for everyone.
Okay.
That went down, I think, to about 35 million, if I remember right.
Oh, so that change did have a significant impact.
Mm-hmm. That figure may not be accurate, but it was a considerable drop.
Okay.
We cannot continue with a defined benefit. We have to find a way to get defined contribution. There are a variety of other things, however, that can be done to improve our pensions, improve in the way that they are less costly for the city. We can negotiate working longer, so retiring at 55 instead of 50,
Right.
or 62
So
instead
different
of
pension
55.
formula,
Yes.
which is what the fire department did, because there are two point.
They went to two-tier.
Right, the new employees, because you can't touch the ones that are already in the program because of the state constitution. But the new hires, it's 2% at 55. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
And that's great, but that won't produce any savings for 20 years.
Right, exactly. So it's a step, but it's something that's not
Yeah.
going to have an impact until people retire and get replaced.
Correct.
And, yeah.
But there are other things that can be changed if the employee agrees to it. And part of it is readjusting the formula for how long you work, how much of their pension they pay themselves.
Well, certainly getting the employee groups to agree has not been a point of tremendous traction in Vallejo.
No,
So
but
that's a tough one.
Hopefully after what's happened here, they will begin to see that it's no longer a choice between what they have now and what they would have in the future benefit-wise. It's a choice between what they have in the future benefit-wise and having a job.
Right. And that's all over the state too.
Yeah,
People are facing the same problems.
It's not unique to Vallejo. Unfortunately, we did not achieve the savings that we needed to in bankruptcy.
So what do you think about the bankruptcy now that in retrospect you can look back at it with a little bit of distance? Do you think it was the right move? Do you think that there was any other option? And what would it have looked like had we not gone into bankruptcy? So give me your thoughts on that.
There was no other option. Every other option, some of them quite bizarre, were explored for 6 months.
Calvin Grigsby option.
Calvin Grigsby.
Having
yes.
the once disgraced Bond King of Miami come and buy all our debt.
Well, that might have been good for him, but it would not have been good for the city, because
Right.
the debt that we have now it's municipal bonds, much lower interest rate that the city has to pay on that. If those were no longer municipal bonds or on the open market as another type of instrument, we would be paying probably 7.5%
So buried in debt
as
service
opposed
for
to
ever.
5%. That's right.
Yeah.
Immediately we would have a much higher debt service. Not a good idea. We had no choice in the sense that we were running out of money, and you cannot ask employees to come to work knowing that you can't pay them.
Right.
So
It's illegal to do that.
correct.
You can't do
It is completely illegal. So it wasn't a case of shall we do this or shall we do that. There was nothing else left. The cost has been considerably more than expected, but most of that has occurred because of opposition to the bankruptcy. The challenge of...
And it was a unanimous vote for the bankruptcy as well.
Yes.
Everybody voted for it.
Yeah, I think everyone finally became convinced that there simply was no other route available. I do not regret the decision to go into bankruptcy. I do not regret the cost of the bankruptcy. What I'm really disappointed in is that we did not use the opportunity to achieve in bankruptcy what we could have. We settled the police contract in February of 2009 and got virtually nothing other than capped health care and raises. So I guess it would be more appropriate to say we got less than nothing. The next contract was in, I think police was January, the next was camp, that was in February. We got nothing there either, other than the same cap. Then approximately a year later, in March 2010, we had fire. And they made concessions, and I commend them for it, but it wasn't the full amount that we needed. The group that I give the most kudos to is IBEW. They came up with 3.2 million in savings. We needed 3.6, but they came a lot closer to the goal than anyone else, and they did it themselves. I think that's great, and it proves that it can be done. If they could do it, the other 3 unions can do it too. We tell them how much we need, and they go figure out where it's going to come from. Their choice as to where the savings might be achieved may not be mine, but it's theirs, and if it's sustainable, if it's reasonable, if it maintains the level of service that we want for our citizens, then I'm okay with it.
Right. And it's certainly commendable of IBEW that they stepped up to the plate. It's just a shame that the lowest paid employees in the city are the ones that gave the most.
IBEW has always stepped up to the plate. They have always been one of the first to make concessions, and I wouldn't blame them for being more than a little upset, because it seems every time they've done that, what they have saved has been moved to some other group to prosper from. So I think IBEW deserves a lot of credit, not just now, but over the years.
Right. Now, when we talk about the employee groups and the unions, that kind of leads into special interests and the influence of special interests on Vallejo elections, the unions being really some of the major special interests. So talk to me a little bit about your backers, your thoughts on the influence of these special interest groups on the Vallejo elections, and what you think people should be aware of.
Well, I am not accepting any donations from any special interest groups as far as unions and that type of activity where they are heavily involved in the election process, because there's an obligation there. And I don't want to be obligated to anyone other than our citizens. It's not reasonable, and that's not just Vallejo, it's all over. It's not reasonable to think that any group is going to put a lot of money into an election for a candidate and expect nothing in return. And I think that was very well illustrated by the contracts that were approved when we were in bankruptcy.
Right. Well, moving to a completely different topic. Medical marijuana. We are engulfed in a wave of green and a cloud of smoke in this city. We're really, in a sense, it seems to me, on the verge of marijuana-driven chaos. We don't have an ordinance in place. I know that you have supported the idea of a medical marijuana ordinance. You
Yes.
were involved in writing the argument in favor
Of the tax on the business license.
On business, exactly. That's going to be on the ballot in November.
Measure C.
Measure C. And I kind of wanted to knock that around with you to get an idea of what you think is the approach. We have so many, it's over 20, 23, 24, something like that in the city at this point. So there are many of these. They don't have, there's no business license category for what they do. So they go in as health food stores and things like that. And obviously there's a potential for revenue to be derived from these businesses. I don't think anyone would argue that at this point we have got way too many of them. And there's also the issue of legal, shall we say, scabbard rustling on the state and federal level that brings some of the terms of the Compassionate Use Act into question in regard to the difference between state and federal law and whether something is going to happen. So what do you think the steps are for us regarding medical marijuana dispensaries, how to get the revenue from them, what should be done, and is it even going to work, or do you think that the possibility of the federal government coming down on it and just dropping the hammer is a possibility?
Yes, it's a possibility, and it's unfortunate that federal and state laws are not in sync. However, that's not the first and only time. ADA is not in sync with Title 24 either.
What's Title 24?
Title 24 is the state law that is equivalent to ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. Title 24 is what is used by building inspectors within the state of California. They do not inspect to ADA requirements. They inspect to Title 24 requirements.
I see.
So the people who go around and sue for noncompliance with ADA are able to do that because of that difference between the two state laws. So the state law regarding medical marijuana and federal law are just another example of state and federal being in opposition to each other. Having said that, I'm totally in favor of medical marijuana for seriously ill people who need that type of medicine. And I consider it medicinal. When it's used for recreation, it's not medicinal.
How do you, I mean, there certainly seems to be, I guess you could call it a culture of nudge, nudge, wink, wink, with a lot of dispensaries.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think.
But how do we address that is the question. Even when I interviewed Matt Shotwell at Greenwell, and he seems to be a guy that really is trying to do it by the rules. He seems to be determined that he's going to make sure people have the card. He's going to make sure everything's legitimate. Of course, there's a whole issue of the doctors that dispense or issue the medical marijuana recommendations, and the dispensaries, obviously, they can't judge a person's medical condition. So if someone has the card that says they have a condition, they're compelled to accept it. They can't make that judgment. So you've got this issue of, and even Matt Shotwell in the interview, he said, well, not every single person that comes in here is going to just absolutely die without medical marijuana, but it does help a lot of people and it makes their life better. Of course, kind of the conventional wisdom is that you go to these doctors and you give them your $150 and nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you got a card and there you go. So within the, the goal is, people that really need it should get it, but how do you address the issue of this, or should we?
Well, 2 members of my family have died of cancer. My husband went through radiation therapy twice, and I saw how ill it made him and how much weight he lost. Possibly that could have helped him. That was in the late 80s, early 90s. Nobody was even aware of, well, I can't say they weren't aware of the medicinal properties, but it wasn't out there to be used.
It was less widespread.
So in that area where it alleviates suffering, I think it's great. But like so many other things, it's moved into something that is no longer that. I think we should have 2 to 4 medical marijuana dispensaries geographically situated around town in areas that would be convenient for patients to get to, not all clustered in one place. I think we need regulations, and they've offered freely to be taxed and come to council meetings and pleaded to be taxed. So I see no problem with that. What's happening now is that we have a zoning ordinance that sort of gives the impression that it might be okay to open a marijuana shop, because the ordinance says that only the uses that are listed are permitted. Now, marijuana isn't listed, but some of those businesses are coming in as health food stores, bakeries, vitamin supplement stores. They've found all kinds of ways to make themselves fit within that zoning ordinance. My position, though, is that we need something much stronger. It's going to take a little while to get to that, which means writing the ordinance, and that we needed a way to say stop, no more are coming in until we get this ordinance complete. what I have been told is that that's what a moratorium would do.
So you favor the moratorium idea?
Yes, I do. The advice from the city attorney's office is just the opposite, that a moratorium wouldn't accomplish anything, and the county just did a moratorium. City of Novato just did one. Now, I've been told circumstances were different in that there were no existing medical marijuana dispensaries in either the county or the city of Novato or other places where a moratorium has existed. That may be true. I don't know. What I do know is that we certainly can't have them all in downtown Vallejo, and we can't have 23 or 24 of them in Vallejo. That's not going to work.
Right.
And we should have some regulations at least ready very shortly, from what I was told. And I think the perception of our citizens that nothing is being done that's appropriate up until this point was a valid one.
Okay. Bouncing from downtown over to Mare Island.
Yes.
Obviously, Mare Island has been a place that we have looked towards for revitalization, a place that we all, I think, have looked towards, hopefully, as a place that will generate revenue and that we'll have some businesses that are generating revenue. We've had some successes, obviously. There's Toro. The shipbreaking operation out there is a nice plus to see some industrial activity. Alstom refurbishing and working on rail cars. So there have been some steps out there. Recently the Mare Island Studios kind of came and went, it seems. They may have another whack at it because the request for qualifications is going out, so we'll wait and see if they come up with the funding. There's a lot of talk about different ideas. One of the ones that's floating around is a casino. What are your thoughts about putting a casino on Mare Island?
Well, let's back up a little bit as to why Mare Island has not achieved the level of commercial success
okay,
that
let's
we
start
wanted.
there.
In 2002, City of Vallejo, Mare Island was able to get the first early transfer in the entire country for any previously used military base, or in our case, naval shipyard. That was good. It allowed the turnover of property much quicker than previously. However, at that time, the city sort of backed away from what they had done previously, which was take the lead when it was necessary to deal with other government entities, such as the Navy, the Department of Defense, other state agencies like Department of Toxic Substance Control, State Lands Commission. I think there's 15 or 16 different
Right.
entities that we had to work with.
Kind of an acronym salad.
Yes, alphabet soup.
Yeah.
The problem with doing that is that when an entity such as City of Vallejo has to deal with other government agencies, said that wrong. When there are other government agencies to deal with, it requires another government entity such as the city to spearhead that contact. City of Vallejo backed away from that after 2002. That's something that needs to be reestablished. We need to reestablish the key relationships that we had with these other agencies. We need to get a commitment schedule from the Navy. We need to reestablish the Mare Island Oversight Committee. Lennar has said they will fund it. So I think the city dropped the ball.
Okay.
After 2002. Now,
The question I just wanted to interject before we go there. When we talk about the city dropping the ball, a lot of people say the city dropped the ball in Lennar's court, and Lennar proceeded to take a nap. So what are your thoughts about that sentiment?
Basically what I just said. We were not there to support Lennar. They were kind of left on their own. Then the economy took a nosedive, And like almost every other developer that has come to Vallejo, they have ideas of what they're going to do besides housing, but housing is their first step. And it's key because it makes them money so they can do the other things. So to condemn Lennar for doing housing on Mare Island, I think is not appropriate. They have put in a great deal of money in infrastructure, and I think building 680, where we're looking at blue homes coming in, I think Lennar put $4.5 million of improvements into that. And the reason we have them is, number one, the city doesn't have the expertise to do that kind of development. And number two, the city certainly doesn't have the money to do it. So we need someone else to do it. Maybe Lennar isn't the perfect choice, but in 1997, when that choice was made, some of the other options were far less what we wanted over there. Some were just housing builders, and that was it.
Right. So maybe Lennar was the least ugly of the ugly ducklings, something like that.
It was, yeah. Okay. I would say that the others had less to offer than Lennar did.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, not knowing, as many people don't, what was available at that time, right. It's easy to say, well, why did you take Lennar? Or they're not doing this, or this. Well, if we'd gotten someone who was strictly a home builder, and there were at least 2 who applied at that time, we would have even less.
Okay.
And remember that at that point in time, no one in the United States had any experience with converting a military base to private use. Right. No one. Not cities, not developers, nobody.
Yeah, so there was no one with a track record to look at, really.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Now we're starting to move towards some of the other things that have been looked at on Mare Island. The Mare Island Studios thing recently, the recent closing of their exclusive right, moving forward with the RFQ request for qualifications for other options for the North End. So you were starting to give me some thoughts on that. So,
well, we have had 2 or 3 developers who've been interested in the North End who had exclusive rights to negotiate for years. Maryland Studios was only given that for a few months. If we had people lining up to come in over there, then that would have been okay. But it sat since 1996 with no viable development occurring. So I was not eager to push away the only interested party. And right. That was Mare Island Studios.
Right.
And I felt that the short time frame they were offered was not appropriate.
And obviously, we've got Callahan de Silva on the waterfront for a very long time.
Yep.
And we've got I'm having, my brain is freezing, in the downtown Triad, thank you. Triad, who's been pushed out, and now the city is facing a lawsuit. What are your thoughts about the Triad situation? Callahan de Silva has had exclusive right on the waterfront for a long time without much happening.
Our waterfront's been tied up by developers who really did nothing with it for a lot longer than Callahan de Silva. I think the original group that came in was the Hanford group, I think. That's a long time ago. They had it tied up for well over 15 years and did nothing. Then another group, the Martin group, came in. I don't remember that they ever got any kind of a development agreement on it. And then Callahan de Silva came in, and they've had it tied up for, 8 to 10 years? They're not being held to any kind of a performance schedule. So to allow another group to come in the case of Mare Island Studios, I know we're not talking about Mare Island anymore, but I think you need to give them a reasonable length of time. And one of the big mistakes that has been made by the city in the contracts for virtually everybody we just talked about is that there's no performance schedule, ever. They could hang on to it as long as they want and do nothing. And that's been evidenced by our waterfront, not just by Callahan de Silva, but everybody who's ever had any kind of control over it.
Right. I mean, when you look at Vallejo overall, and you know, it's unfortunately our city, it has kind of gained the moniker of Vallejo, City of Missed Opportunities, which is sad, because when I moved here and I looked around and I just said, my God, this place, there's opportunities everywhere. We can't go wrong. How is it possible? And it seems like there have been so many missed opportunities, missteps, things that have just gone off the edge and never happened in terms of development, economic development, and being able to put together a vision. Obviously, it's very tough now because of the economy, but if you are elected mayor, going forward, what is your overall vision for fostering that kind of economic development, growth, and seeing some of these areas that have been long fallow? Ding dong. Is it your clock?
No, that's my phone.
Oh, it's your phone.
Yeah.
Do you need to get it?
No.
Okay, we'll let it ring then. So what is your vision overall? The steps that need to be taken that you would work towards as mayor?
Well, our first avenue for economic development is Mare Island. We have said that from the time that that base was decommissioned in 1996. And as we were discussing earlier, since 2002, the city has not been as involved in it as it should have been. My first step would be to re-involve the city as it has been when we were actually making progress with it. That, I think, would move Mare Island along faster. Downtown, I see that as boutique-type businesses and restaurants. No, I don't see a big box type of operation down there. It's not conducive to it. The architecture isn't conducive. And what we need are businesses that complement, do not compete with the big boxes that are already here. I think a lot can be done with it being an arts and entertainment district. That's what has happened in many cities.
Right, and that was kind of the triad concept, in a sense, to be
part of it.
Create that.
Well, they want to do mixed-use development, which would include that. But they also wanted nothing but retail on Georgia Street for what would be two blocks of Georgia Street. I think that's a little bit too tight. I think you need personal service types businesses there. And when downtown was in its heyday, shall we say, there was retail and there were also personal service businesses. There were insurance companies, dry cleaners, all the things that you find that people need besides the big stores that were down there. And I think that's the niche for downtown Vallejo. That's what I would like to see there.
Okay. What about just starting back? We touched on casino idea for Mare Island, and I wanted to get your take on that. People are talking about it. It's been something that's been knocked around more than once. Do you think it's viable? Do you think it's feasible? Is it a good place to put something like that?
Well, I think a better place to put it would be at the intersection of 37 and I-80. Mm-hmm. There's quite a bit of acreage there that's available, high visibility. People would come in off of the freeway spontaneously. They wouldn't have to plan a trip. One of the problems.
Right, so out near the mall is where you're thinking of, like across from Solano College?
Closer towards I-80.
Okay,
yeah,
so right in there.
There's some acreage that's right there at that juncture.
Gotcha, the horses that you always see wandering around over there.
That's the place.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. There's like a little plateau where it fronts onto I-80 and would be high visibility, much higher than anything we could put on Mare Island. And there was some brief interest in that by a casino developer who was here from Florida that I had some conversations with 4 or 5 years ago. and that was their choice for it. And they're certainly much more experienced in the locations in which to site casinos than I am.
Okay. Well, so you're willing to consider a casino, but maybe Mare Island's not the best place.
Yes, that's my feeling on it. I think there are better places. I don't think that we're in a position to say no to anything without taking a long, hard look at it. We also, one of the advantages to having a casino, if we have one, in the location that I mentioned earlier, is it would be its proximity to Six Flags. So it would be a whole area in there, and what is going to be developed on the fairgrounds. That entire area would be sort of linked, sort of joined together. It was all entertainment. And we're talking about fairgrounds being an entertainment center as well. So siting them reasonably close to each other, I think, would be a big advantage.
Right.
I understand that the paperwork challenges for getting a casino are quite lengthy. That there's, you need to be prepared for it to take a while.
The transfer to become part of a sovereign Indian nation and all of the federal and state stuff.
Regs.
Right.
I also think if we ever get to that point, it is absolutely essential that the city get an exceptional contract out of it, because there won't be any property taxes. So whatever we negotiate with that group is what we will get. So if we have someone doing that who doesn't get absolutely everything they can for the city, then the city is not going to be a big winner. Pardon the pun.
So Joanne, is there any question or any area that we haven't touched on that jumps to your mind and you think, God, I wish he asked me about this?
I'm sure there will be. Schools, for one thing.
Let's touch on that then.
Well, the city has no direct control over the school district. School has its own board of trustees, and we need to find a way to work with school district, but not to usurp or supplant that board of trustees. I think there are a lot of things that we can do to work together. We can cooperate, collaborate in order to save money, because sometimes we're providing the same type of service. And I don't just mean that type of partnership with school district. It would also be with Greater Vallejo Recreation District. The library can be included, Sand and Flood can be included, Solano College. We all purchase supplies. If we all got together, I think we could probably purchase them a whole lot cheaper than doing them separately the way they are now. But one of the things I would like to see that is both for the schools and for Vallejo's future is the establishment of trade schools. We have a lot of people, not just in Vallejo, but everywhere, who don't want to go to college. They want to do something different than that. And we're not providing the education for that. I think that's a big mistake. Vallejo's recovery is, to a great extent, dependent on our schools' recovery. The cities that have suffered least in this recession have had good schools that turn out a well-educated labor force, that attracts business, and that in turn escalates property values. So it's all linked together. There's no way of just doing a little part of it and not have it affect all of the rest of it. So that's why I said I think we need to find a way, not sure what that way is yet, to work with the schools, to have this be a collaborative effort.
Okay. Well, Joanne, maybe you can say a few words to the voters out there and tell them why you are the choice they should make in the election in November. and you can just look right at the camera and tell people why they should vote for you.
Vallejo literally cannot afford 4 more years of business as usual. The fact that that has been occurring for the last 4 years is indicated by the contracts that we talked about earlier, and another contract that was recently approved for Soul Trans, our new consolidated transit system with Vallejo and Benicia. 2 of the members of the board of directors on that group are from Vallejo, and they had an unprecedented opportunity to establish a brand new type of contract with the employees for that group. Also, that would include a new type of pension. They did not. They created the exact same type of contract that is in place with most of our city employee unions right now. To me, that indicates that it's going to be a continuation of what's happened in the last 4 years if we have the same people at the helm. I'm willing, eager, to make the changes that need to be made in achieving sustainable contracts, in making our employee unions making our employees part of a team instead of being divided the way they are now. We need someone who has financial expertise. I do. So that's why I'm running. That's only part of why I'm running. We can improve public safety without a new sales tax. The proponents for the sales tax have no alternate plan if that sales tax does not pass. I have a plan without the sales tax. We have a lot of challenges, and I think we can deal with them. I think we can deal with them successfully, but it's going to take the right person, and I feel that's me. I've demonstrated leadership with the IBEW contract that no one's ever done before. I think we need that kind of thinking. We need to move away from the past. So that's part of the reason that I'm running for mayor.
Joanne, thank you so much for sitting with me and
Thanks, Mark.
sharing your thoughts.
You're welcome. Thank you.